Vor der Kaserne, vor dem großen Tor, stand eine Laterne und steht sie noch davor. So wollen wir uns da wiedersehen, vor der Kaserne wollen wir stehen, wie einst Lili Marleen, wie einst Lili Marleen.
Welcome to the memorial service of Dr. Ian Blair. On behalf of the Blair family, the Wilderness Foundation UK and South Africa, the Wild Foundation USA, the Wilderness Leadership School, South Africa, the Maqubun Ntombela Foundation, South Africa, we welcome you to the official memorial service and celebration of the late Dr. Ian Blair's life. We are honored today to have Dr. Ian Blair's wife, Anne, and son, Amias, here today representing his siblings, Kenneth and Jessica, who are unable to be with us today. We are also honored to have the Honorable Minister, Edna Mlewa. She is the Minister of Environmental Affairs, National, as well as the Deputy Minister, Barbara Thompson, and the Head of Department, Ryan. We are also honored today to have one of Dr. Blair's best friends to the end, Dr. Mangosuthu Buthelezi, all protocols observed.
May I add my welcome to you all. Many of you will have known Ian better than I. From my experience, he was a deeply spiritual man, and hence I think his care for life. He was a faithful member of St. Mark, the little Anglican church in Carkloof, and it is right that we honor him here in the format of a memorial service and a celebration of his life. Like many of us, I have a personal gratitude to Ian. When we were considering establishing a faith-based environment institute, he was most encouraging. "About time," was his response. And so SAFC, the Southern African Faith Communities Environment Institute, which involves all the major religions of Southern Africa, came into being, and we're most grateful for Ian's encouragement. He was supportive for, as Sheila Berry reminded me, Ian rightly berated the church for not being more involved in caring for the environment. In turn, and in honor of Ian, I now encourage all of you who are involved in a faith community and have connections with religious leaders to recognize our responsibility and to care for and get them to care for creation and encourage them to act and act urgently. And if you don't have contacts with religious leaders, maybe you can establish contacts to encourage them. As the Bishop of Natal, Reuben Phillip, wrote in his tribute, though, in the prophetic tradition, Ian challenged the values that give rise to the destruction of nature: self-centeredness, greed, and the ever-growing consumerism that devalues nature. So in honor of Ian, I again encourage you to follow his example. We must become activists, and we must speak out boldly. And if you think I'm being a bit too challenging at this memorial service, I have a strong sense that Ian would be saying, "At last, at last." Finally, and most importantly, for God's sake, and Ian's, and ours, we must protect wilderness areas. They are sacred, are they not? They are sacred. They are places where we can reconnect with nature and restore our souls. Once destroyed, we can never bring them back.
It is with a deep sense of humility, responsibility, and gratitude that I stand here to honor the life of Ian Cedric Player. No man is an island, said the poet John Donne, and it is true. The identity for which we all strive and for which we are ultimately known is impossible to define outside of our relationships, not only with others, but with the animals and with the landscapes in which we live. They shape us in much the same way as we shape them. It is in this regard that I'm mindful and appreciative of you, Anne, and not least the influence of those many outstanding and passionate wilderness characters who, in their own way, played significant roles in shaping Ian's life. Ian passed away peacefully on Sunday, the 30th of November, 2014. He was 87 years of age, the birthdays of Winston Churchill and Mark Twain, and the death of Oscar Wilde. These coincidences in life would not have gone unnoticed by him. His final peaceful surrender at his home in the Carcliff Valley, not far from here, contrasted sharply with the way he lived his life, with the way he dealt with his ailing body, and ultimately his own mortality. The Welsh poet Dylan Thomas would have been proud of him. He raged against the dying of the light, not simply his own dying, but against the toxic darkness of human indifference to the damage it is inflicting on nature. He did not go gentle into that good night. Ian was the founder of the Wilderness Leadership School, the Wilderness Foundation, and the internationally acclaimed Wilderness Congress, a 4-yearly event that over the years, through his efforts, and later that of Vance Martin and Andrew Muir, has brought together many of the world's most prominent environmental campaigners, photographers, conservation scientists, artists, and journalists. Think of Jane Goodall, Sylvia Earle, Wangari Maathai, and more. But back to his history. He was the founder of the Natal Canoe Club, and in 1950 he initiated the world-famous Doozy Canoe Marathon, winning the epic 110-mile event on 3 occasions. As a game ranger for the Natal Parks in the early 1950s, inspired by previous wardens Vaughan Kirby and H.B. Potter's efforts to protect the remaining white rhino in the Umfolozi, he and pilot Hendrik van Schoor conducted the first aerial count of the sole surviving group. The unforgettable number, 437. 437. In 1960, as a senior warden, alarmed by what he described as the horrific poaching of these animals, he initiated and directed the famous Operation Rhino Relocation Program. The result was the successful placement of many of the survivors to other national parks throughout the country, as well as to sanctuaries in the United States and in Europe. Without this initiative, it is almost certain that these creatures would have been classified as extinct today. Instead, his name is now synonymous with the present lively yet threatened status of the species. Sadly, it would appear history is repeating itself. A fierce campaigner for the conservation and protection of wild areas, not only in South Africa, think of St. Lucia, but worldwide, his long list of honors is testimony to his credibility. His legacy, like many of the pioneering poets, writers, and campaigners for the wild, will no doubt be his commitment and dedication to conservation and protection of wild areas. To this cause, he was both driven and tireless, reminding me of the lines of a poem by Robert Frost. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Soldier, adventurer, game ranger, conservationist, activist, author, leader, visionary, speaker, dreamer. There's so much to admire about him, and deservedly so. Like many who knew him, I will remember him most of all for his enduring spirit of respect for the wilderness. Farewell, Madolo. You were a man of courage, discipline, loyalty, commitment, and compassion. You will be missed. Your legacy is in good hands. Thank you.
I'm speaking on behalf of a very large family around the world. I'm not going to name names because you'll just leave people out. Many people are here. Most people aren't, of course. I'll just make special mention of many of the tribal leaders around the world who made very special bonds with Ian. But as we all know, bankers, heads of state, religious leaders, but always the simple people too. What I want to talk about is an external urgency. That urgency is the world in which we live and which we will all die. It was Ian's life mission. Very practical. You had to have policy, you had to have areas, you had to have the external solidified, protected. But the thing about Ian, of course, was the internal. So what I'm going to speak of is our connection. Because Ian Player was connected. In power, he knew how to use it. If the knife was necessary, he did it nicely, but he did it. But he worked more often with love and compassion and with commitment. Vision, faith, action. Ian Player was not short on those. But you have to have the dream. And that dream of a global movement towards wilderness started right here in South Africa, on the banks of the Umfolozi. When old Makubu said to Ian, "Taking these people on trail is good, but it's not enough, Baba." He said, "We need an Ndaba Kulu." And thus this dream was born. This dream, simply said, was of people and nature reconciled, not professionals, not politicians only. Everyone. So what became the World Wilderness Congress was supposed to be a one-off affair. But everybody came, bankers, artists, politicians, scientists. For the first time in international conservation, every race during apartheid on one platform. So we moved on. And over the years, we traveled a lot. Russia, all Africa, Australia, all over the US, Canada, North America. During that time, 10 World Wilderness Congresses, 38 years. What happened was we moved from a place in 1977 in Johannesburg, First World Wilderness Congress. There was no formal designation or recognition of wilderness internationally. None. 10 Congresses, 38 years later. Ian didn't do this, and I didn't do it. We have this fabulous group of people. Our Wilderness Network, Joe, Andrew, the school, but many, many more who are not here now. this family came together. They were committed to the dream of a world where wild nature and people were reconciled. It's a dream as well that is based on the most important thing in our lives, and that's simple truth, the power of simple truth. And what our dream is based on is that wilderness has never been more important than it is today. But it is not as important today as it will be tomorrow. Thank you.
I think of all the organizations that Ian Player founded, that he was part of, that he touched in one way or another. It's the Wilderness Leadership School that really meant the most to him. And so it should. Because if you just take into account the various speeches you've heard so far, you will see the various aspects of Ian's life, that deep sense of history, of culture, the human condition, just doing that, making sure you're paying attention right now. The deep ecology and species, landscapes, all of that really comes together in the wilderness and through a wilderness trail. And that perhaps is why the Wilderness Leadership School was very much at the center of Ian's world. I remember when I started off with Ian, he would say to all of us that he really, truly believed that an experience in wilderness properly facilitated was that spark that would motivate that individual to that higher ideal of conservation. And indeed, we have seen that. We have seen tens of thousands of people throughout the world that have been deeply impacted by a properly facilitated experience of nature. A transformative experience for many, a life-changing experience for many. And Ian honestly believed that the way to tackle the challenges that we are facing in today's world is to get as many people from as many diverse backgrounds as we possibly could to experience wilderness firsthand. And therein lies one of those great qualities of Ian Player, that ability to see people and to talk to people and to give people his full attention no matter who they were whenever he met them. To move out of the shadows. These great conservationists, these wonderful men and women, the Nora Cryers, the Ian Players, the Nick Steeles, the Hugh Dents, they've moved on. They have created an extraordinary platform. It's our turn now. That baton has not been handed to one individual. That baton has been handed to all of us. And now it's our turn.
And we have heard much that has given us inspiration, even joy and determination. And so we will now close this memorial service and celebration.
Vor der Kaserne, vor dem großen Tor, stand eine Laterne und steht sie noch davor. So wollen wir uns da wiedersehen, vor der Kaserne wollen wir stehen, wie einst Lili Marleen, wie einst Lili Marleen. Underneath the lantern by the barrock gate, darling, I remember the way you used to wait. 'Twas there that you whispered tenderly that you loved me, you'd always be